여기 10대 시절 학교에서는 왕따였으며 집단 폭행을 당했던 한 남자가 있습니다. 그는 유복한 집안에서 태어났으나 부모님의 이혼을 겪고 강압적인 아버지 밑에서 자랐습니다. 그랬던 그는 23세에 첫 회사인 집2라는 회사를 창업합니다. 집2는 전화번호부와 지도 기능을 통합한 미국의 인터넷 기반 도시정보를 제공하는 업체였습니다. 지금으로 따지면 구글 지도와 비슷한 서비스였을 거라고 추정합니다. 그는 5년 뒤 28세에 3억 700만 달러로 집2를 매각합니다. 그 당시 지분 7%, 2200만 달러로 28세에 백만장자가 되었습니다. 벌어들인 돈으로 바로 또 다른 회사를 창업합니다. 엑스닷컴이라는 회사를 설립하고 2000년 유사한 서비스를 개발 중인 컨피니티와 합병하며 회사명을 페이팔로 변경하게 되었습니다. 2002년에는 eBay가 페이팔을 15억 달러에 인수합니다. 일론머스크는 지분 약 11%를 보유하고 있었기에 약 1억 7천 달러, 하나로는 2천억의 자본을 소유한 천재 사업가로 이름을 알리게 되었습니다. 여기서 멈추지 않고 2002년에는 스페이스X를 설립하고 테슬라에 전 재산을 올인합니다. 2008년 금융위기 무렵에 테슬라는 부도위기에 처합니다. 스페이스X의 로켓 팔콘이 3차까지 발사를 실패하고 테슬라의 로드스터도 실패했습니다. 하지만 스페이스X의 4차 발사가 극적으로 성공하며 나사에서 하나로 약 2조 원을 지원받습니다. 테슬라는 모델 S를 설계하여 전기차 업계에 큰 주목을 받았으며 일론머스크는 또 한 번 새로운 도전을 합니다. 현재 그는 테슬라, 스페이스X, 솔라시티, 하이퍼루프 프로젝트, 오픈 AI, 뉴럴링크, 더 보링 컴퍼니를 운영하고 있습니다. 모두가 망할 것이라며 자신의 능력을 너무 과대평가한다며 비난받던 일론 머스크가 지금껏 말해온 모든 시나리오를 현실로 만들어가고 있습니다. 그가 얘기하는 전기차, ESS, 2차 전지, AI에 대해 들어보는 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 영상 시청하시기 전에 알파 컨덕터 채널 구독과 좋아요, 알림 설정하시면 최신 영상을 가장 빠르게 보실 수 있습니다. 구독, 좋아요.
Here, that's a whole lot of growth. And so you look back over these last 8 years since we chatted with you last. Is faster or slower adoption than you expected? Any big surprises that you weren't expecting?
Well, it's actually gone reasonably close to what I thought would happen, which is from that point, roughly a 50% year-over-year compound annual growth, which is compliments the Tesla team. It's the fastest growing large manufactured object ever. Which I think the second is like the Model T back in the day, so about 100 years ago. So the Tesla team, I'm very proud to work with them. They've executed incredibly well, and we anticipate something close to 50% growth to continue. So that is very exciting, and it means that we should expect electrification of transport, especially passenger vehicles, quite quickly. Because the normal human instinct is to extrapolate on a linear basis, but really, if you look at the curves, electric vehicles are growing exponentially. So I think that's great news for those in the room. You have a lot of customers. You have a lot of EV customers ready, and soon you'll have many more. Forgive me for waxing on a little bit here, but I sometimes ask, well, when will EVs be most of the cars? The important thing to remember is that you've got 2 billion cars and trucks out there. So, and about 100 million per year new vehicle production, which kind of makes sense. There's sort of a life of about 20 years before a vehicle finally goes to the scrapyard. So even if 100% of electric vehicles were, our new vehicle production was electric today, it would still take 20 years to replace the fleet. So just important to bear that in mind. Percentage of new vehicle production versus total fleet. But I think we're moving quickly to the point where probably half of all new vehicles made will be electric, and I think that's that's likely to happen, I think, before the end of this decade. But then there's still, call it another 20 years beyond that before the fleet really becomes majority EV. So,
yeah, we have an executive order that calls for all new vehicle sales being zero emission by 2035. That's in line with the forecast that we've had in our own scenario analysis. That still puts us at about 3/4 of passenger vehicles being electric in 2045 when the state gets to net zero. It could be off by a little bit, but
I think that the larger point is that demand for electricity is going to be extremely high.
Yeah.
So I hope this is good news. If you just do the rough back of the envelope math, you need to roughly triple electricity to get to a fully electric economy. Roughly a third of power is electric, and then these are very rough numbers. Roughly a third is spent in transportation of various kinds with fossil fuels or hydrocarbons, and then roughly a third is heating. So even assuming the sort of current economic usage, electricity per capita being constant, you're looking at roughly a tripling of electricity demand. So it's really going to take a tremendous effort to address this demand. This is sort of, I think, very, very good news for those producing electricity, but also entails a tremendous amount of work ahead in new production capacity and production capacity that is as sustainable as possible.
Well, I mean, in fact, it requires a whole system to be ramping up. It's you are dealing with the storage side and the vehicle side and the charging side, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a bit.
Yeah,
we have the wires, but we need support from all across the economy. Right?
Absolutely, it's really very much a joint effort. I think it's a very positive future for the producers and distributors of electricity. Really couldn't ask for a better, a growing market that's going to grow in a better way than this. But it is a tremendous amount of hard work, as everyone here knows, to actually put that generation in place and then transport it to where it gets used, and then dealing with the peaks and then taking advantage of the valleys of power production. I mean, that's really where, like the Tesla Megapack that you're just alluding to, is actually incredibly helpful. Is in sort of peak shaving the grid, basically charging up when you have excess power production, and then releasing it when you have insufficient power production or you want to peak shave. It's I really believe that stationary battery packs are absolutely the way to go, it is actually the fastest growing portion of the entire Tesla business. So our vehicles are growing at 50% a year, but our stationary storage is growing at 200 to 300% a year. So it's really, it's really a big deal and can be really helpful. It's just obviously it's a battery at scale, and it buffers electricity. If you need electricity buffered, then that's a good product.
Well, and it sets up thinking about what's the transition there, but ultimately though we're looking at a future that's electric. So we all agree on the efficiency of the trucks. Let me state something that's blatantly obvious: bigger and more trucks, bigger and more batteries, right? So let's talk about the supply chain for batteries. And I want to say thank you, because a number of the folks here were able to get a tour of the Gigafactory here in Austin.
Yes, and actually I apologize, I didn't properly answer your question with respect to trucks, because so semi-trucks, because they do use a large battery, will be later than other vehicles, because we need to have sufficient battery supply in order to have a battery that's maybe 4 or 5 times larger than it would be in a passenger car. Have that be in a semi-truck. That's the reason why we haven't gone to scale production of semi-truck yet, is because there just weren't enough batteries. Now, as the battery problem is solved, we will go go to volume production with the semi-truck. And I'm pretty sure Tesla will be first on this, but we're expecting to reach volume production probably sometime next end of next year is what we're aiming for. And again, it's not going to be overnight all the trucks become electric, because you have to reach a certain percentage of new semi-trucks built, then replace the fleet. The fleet is at least 10 years old in the semi-truck case. And so, but I think it probably gets to 50% of new semi-trucks built within probably 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years. And then it's another 10, 15 years before you see most trucks be electric. So that's, I don't know, depending on your perspective, that's either really soon or far away.
But then how do you think about the supply chain behind that, the rare earth materials? Are you thinking about different chemistries over time or other ways to make sure you're getting the supply of batteries you need for that kind of scale growth?
Yeah, so the raw materials are not really an issue here, especially when you consider iron-based cathodes. So we think probably most of the batteries made will be with an iron cathode. Iron is extremely common. It's actually the most common element on Earth by mass is iron. Second is oxygen. Everything else is in the remaining roughly 38%. So we have more iron there. We're basically a rusty ball. That's what Earth is. Iron oxide, iron and oxygen. Iron and oxygen and some silicon and a few other things. But it's funny that Earth is by mass almost 2/3 iron and oxygen. Yeah. So we're not going to run out of iron, that's for sure.
Right.
And especially for stationary storage, where mass and volume are not that important, an iron-based lithium-ion cell. So the thing about lithium-ion cells is like there's a lot of talk of lithium, but actually the lithium is like the salt on the salad. It's not the salad itself. The costs tend to predominate, and certainly the mass of the pack predominates in the cathode, which is it's going to be a metal, and the higher energy chemistries tend to be nickel, and then the lower energy density chemistry will be iron. So you'd use nickel for kind of long range stuff where mass and volume really matter, and you'd use iron where it's less important. So medium range cars, stationary storage, iron. Long range cars and aircraft would definitely be nickel. It's just everything's going to be electric, and I think the average power usage per person is going to increase a fair bit. I mean, an interesting thing to consider is like total power used by humans on average over time. And you say like you go from not that long ago when the best we could do was kind of make a campfire. So you say, and I'm talking like electricity and thermal energy per human was extremely tiny if you even go back 200 years. We literally had to burn wood or coal locally to gain heat. There was no electricity. And even if you take all the steam engines and everything and divide that by total number of humans, power usage per human, thermal, electrical, or otherwise, was minuscule 200 years ago, and even less 300 years ago. Now it is incredibly high, and it is rising. And this is, and you're going to see, I think, a lot of electricity usage by the sort of neural net data centers as well. Those are heavy power draws. In fact, I think one of the scaling constraints for AI is going to be power availability. That they are quite power hungry. So you've got basically average energy usage per person increasing dramatically, and a transition from burning hydrocarbons to things that are more sustainable. Anyway, the point is it's going to be 3x current, and I think that 3x number is probably happens around 2045-ish. So,
Well, let me shift topics a little bit. And you mentioned AI earlier in the context of being one of those drivers of
Yeah.
electricity load increases. But you've also been pretty outspoken about both the potential and the risks of AI. I think a number of us are moving really quickly right now with use cases on how we use it. I'll give you one example. At Edison, last year, we did almost 200,000 asset inspections in high wildfire risk areas using drones. Just generating terabytes of data, great ability to capture images all around. There's no way humans could process all those images, so we've been using an AI-enabled tool to down-select the images that we're going to look at. We're looking at other use cases right now, but we recognize there's risk too. So I'd love your thoughts about, broadly across industry, and then if you think about our sector, how should we be thinking about AI from your perspective and both the opportunities and the risks there?
well, I mean, I've had many sleepless nights thinking about AI. So I am worried about AI on the downside. AI is just it's sort of a technology like nuclear. It's extremely powerful, but it could get out of hand. So I have been struggling with this question for a long time of what to do to mitigate AI existential risk. So I think we need to be preemptive on this front. So I've had a number of conversations with world leaders, including very senior people in China and around the world, Europe. I'm actually heading to Europe tomorrow to have some AI safety conversations with some of the country leaders there. Is because I think this is the kind of thing where the world needs to work together on AI safety. It's a really big deal. I can't emphasize this enough. So I was somewhat encouraged by China's willingness to engage in AI regulation. I did point out that if you get some digital superintelligence, it might be in charge of China instead of you. And I'm not sure you would like that. That argument seemed to resonate.
일론머스크는 이런 얘기를 했습니다. 테슬라는 한때 생존의 위기를 겪었고 내가 가진 모든 것을 바치지 않았다면 테슬라는 파산했을 것이다. 나는 하루에 15시간 이상 일하고 주 7일간 365일 눈 떠있는 모든 시간을 일하는데도 사람들은 나에게 운이 좋다고 말한다. 오늘 영상도 시청해주셔서 감사합니다. 금융시장 초과 수익 지휘자 알파 컨덕터였습니다.